Thank you all for coming. This has been, this was the 75th session, General Assembly session, and we're very glad that you're all here tonight. So we're asking the representatives and senators to tell us what they thought their most important bills were, to tell us about their experience this year, and what they thought was some of the most important things that happened. So we're going to let them speak for a little bit, and then we're going to open it up to some questions.
Yeah, I have the wrong pile of papers. Yeah, I'm gonna go get my brush. I don't know what it did with it.
What Pascal you're on it now? We're going to start with you.
Okay, it's on right now? Yep, okay, cool. Hey everybody, I'm Representative Amy Pascal. I'm House District 18, which you are sitting in right now. 18 is mostly on the west side, Garden of the Gods Road and south. And then it goes over the other side of the highway from Uinta down to Las Vegas and over to El Paso Street. This is my first session ever. It was a very interesting and eye-opening experience. I learned a lot. It's a huge ramp up of a job for sure. And there's a lot of handouts over in the back if you're interested in picking them up. One of the handouts is discussing the bills that I ran. And then there's also a bunch of handouts that kind of look like this. That's sort of the summary of bills passed throughout the whole session by the Democratic caucus. So feel free to pick those up as well. I'm going to talk a little bit about the bills that I ran. So being a first-time legislator, you win your election November 4th or so, and then your first bills are due in December. So it was pretty eye-opening experience. So one of the approaches that I took, I had big ideas that I wanted to focus on solving, but I like affordable housing. But am I going to come up with a solution by myself in a month that's a good solution? No. So mostly what I did was work on what they call department bills or lobbyist bills. So I worked with the Colorado Energy Office on a couple of bills. One of those, one of these sheets has my bills on it. It has a very, very broad name, Statewide Energy Strategies. And what it turned out ultimately to be is a regulation on electric vehicle chargers, sort of like the same way that you go get gas at the gas pump and you pay for a gallon and you get a gallon. And there's state agencies that make sure that those pumps work correctly. Same kind of thing for electrical vehicle chargers. That was one bill. I also, with Department of Natural Resources, I worked on a bill that put into place stewardship for carbon sequestration. You might not know what that is. I had no idea what it was when I started working on this bill. And what carbon sequestration is you basically scoop carbon out of the air and stuff it underground. It's one way to try to clean the air. And we already had this ability in law to do this. We don't have any projects going yet, but the ability was in law. But questions started coming up like, what if somebody starts one of these projects and abandons it, or they finish the project and then they go on about their life and start working on something else? What happens if something goes wrong? So what this bill did was set up an enterprise, Tabor enterprise, that has companies that are doing a carbon sequestration project. They have to pay a fee into it, and then this money is used to ensure that the state has a board that watches these sites once they've been completed and takes care of it if there's any problem. That bill also had regulations regarding geothermal energy. We also don't have any geothermal energy projects, big projects in the state at this point. But there was a couple of task forces that had met, and they came up with questions like, okay, what about this? What if I have a well, which is shallow water? I also want to do deep geothermal, and do I have to get a different permit for each one? And who has jurisdiction over these? And so those kind of questions had come up, and this was just to clean that up a little bit and make sure it was clear what the jurisdiction was, and you wouldn't have to do double permitting if you had a project that involved different kinds of geothermal. The other exciting thing that happened was the commercial hot springs folks saw that bill and went, wait a minute, I don't know about this geothermal stuff. I don't want anybody, damaging my business. So spent a lot of time with them, hammering out the details of it, trying to make sure that we kept them whole and that there wasn't going to be any injury to commercial hot springs, which I think is important. So those were two big bills. I had some smaller bill. I don't know how long we want to talk about these, but you can read more about it. I did do one bill that I was one of the second house sponsors. So a bill starts in one of the chambers, either in the House or the Senate. That chamber can have up to 2 sponsors on it. And then it goes over to the other chamber, and you need to have at least 1 sponsor on it for the other chamber who's going to shepherd it through that process. So I was the second chamber sponsor on a bill to ensure that dogs and cats that are used in testing for health-related products, that organizations that do that, if the animal is still in good health and still able to be a pet, that they make a reasonable effort to find an owner for that pet. And also one that there is one very specific type of senior living center, and as you all know, Colorado, we're a growing population, we're an aging population. Positions, rooms in assisted living facilities can be kind of hard to come by, and this bill allows folks who are on a waiting list for a room to be able to receive some services from that assisted living facility, home health care, maybe do socializing. It allows that facility to offer that kind of service. Which I won't go through anymore because I'll be here all day. I know Mark's over there going, when is this lady going to shut up? So I'll pass it on to you, Mark.
Well, thank you, Amy. Welcome, everybody. Thank you very much for coming out on this Thursday afternoon. And I can't tell you how honored I am to have Amy Pascal take my seat in the House District 18. I think you've done a fabulous job.
Thank you, I appreciate it.
And first year, as always, like Amy, I'm in my first year in the Senate after 6 years in the House. And while there's a lot of similarities, there's a lot of differences also. So I consider myself just completed my first session in the Senate and learned a lot. And I'll sum up a little bit more because I have well over 20 bills here that I worked on. By the way, 16 of those were bipartisan. So 75–80% of the bills I ran this year, I had a Republican co-prime sponsor. To sum it up, I have bills that were designed to keep our communities safe. I have a bill that protects victims of domestic violence, improves safety of our roads and our railroads, and to prevent overdoses, especially opioids, in schools. Healthy and safety Colorado communities was our and my top priority. I've been on the Finance Committee in the House for 6 years. I'm on the Senate Finance Committee, so fiscal policy and regulation are things I love. I'm not sure why, but I wrote a lot of bills in that area. I had a bill to enforce antitrust laws and make it easier for Colorado, especially the Attorney General, to police those. It basically aligns Colorado, gets first crack at what's called Hart-Scott-Rodino filings at the federal level. I ran a Uniform Antitrust Pre-Merger Notification Act. Of course, I'm also a Uniform Law Commissioner, so I generally get those bills that run. That was one of those. I had the Colorado Avoidable Transactions Act, which peculiarly enough, Colorado did not qualify as a uniform law because we have series with certain types of instruments that we don't allow in Colorado. So we had to retitle it the Colorado Avoidable Transactions Act. And then also a lot of work in the insurance area, protecting consumers, making sure, you know, the real thrust of what I like to do in these areas is to identify the really egregious practices, the really bad actors, and really focus on a way to get them to change their ways, and if they won't, maybe they don't need to do business in Colorado. But one, I think, the biggest problems we have in the legislature, sometimes they have bills that are very sweet and cover everybody. And sometimes those prevent hardships to really otherwise hardworking, good actors in a space. So I find that one of the toughest things that you can try and target down on when you're doing looking at bills and what you're going to work on. So I have a bunch of bills. I'm happy to talk about any of them or any votes I took on any of the bills that came up this year. Overall, I think for Colorado, our number one topic really still remains affordability. So we passed legislation preventing price gouging, junk fees, rent algorithms, lowering property insurance rates, simplifying the subscription cancellation process. If you ever tried to do that, you know how difficult that can be. Protecting veteran services, which are under attack, unfortunately now from the Trump administration, some of the things they're proposing. We worked on reducing child care costs, predatory booting of vehicles, protecting safety net providers and adding more starter homes. We had a whole area where we tried to do, recognizing the change in the federal landscape, is how can we protect Coloradans and our Colorado way of life and make it blunt any of the effects that are coming from the federal government. So, you know, again, we're very strong on reproductive rights with our, actually back in '24, had that ballot measure, took some of the really offensive and egregious language out of our state constitution. We did work on safeguarding your freedoms, healthcare, education, civil rights in the student area. I'm proud to say in my time in the legislature, we have raised the per pupil funding from $8,123 to $11,863. Approximately $3 billion more has gone into K-12 education. We've set up laws that prohibit the use of cell phones in schools. We were able to fully fund the Healthy School Meals program. We did some work in higher education, really trying to make what we're teaching in our higher education institutions conform with the jobs that are out there and will be out there. And then saving students' lives. I had a bill that dealt with providing the antagonists for opioid overdose. You know, you hate to do this, you're taking it down into the high schools and even the middle schools. But folks, it's the third leading cause of death in this country for young people. And we've just got to keep doing everything we can to do it. Quickly, we did some more work in the environment with wildfire risk reduction, for still promoting our energy transition, a lot of work in water protection and public lands protection. A lot of those are in response to some of the stuff we've heard out of Washington. We also did a lot of work in healthcare, housing, improving public safety and workers' protections. I did have a bill, a railroad safety bill, creates the Office of Railroad Safety. I haven't got word if that's going to get signed or not, and given that Governor Polis vetoed the Senate Bill 5, the one that got rid of the second vote, the Labor Peace Act. Trying to find out if he's going to sign. It's a good bill. You need those protections. And with the federal reductions in force, we have 2 people in the Federal Railroad Commission responsible for Utah, 4 states. I think it's Utah, Colorado, New Mexico, Wyoming. 2 people covering all that time. We're going to create a state office and make sure. You may remember we had a horrible accident just down across the Pueblo County line a couple of years back, and a truck driver lost his life. So I thought it was a very good session. I'm somewhat known as a moderate. And so when I first got up there, after we had a split legislature, it's the first time the Democrats had both chambers in the governor's mansion, there were a lot of big transformative bills that have been queued up in the system for quite a while. But I thought this year, we did a really good job, and we had to be fiscally responsible because we had a $1.2 billion deficit. I have never seen so many fiscal notes with a zero on them. This year, probably more than the previous 6 years combined. And I think it shows that when you really want to do something, there's a way to make it happen, and you can find a way. So, but our fiscal problems are not going away. We opened every drawer and swept every cash fund to balance the budget this year. It's only going to be worse next year. So I am looking for some kind of table reform, not a repeal. I don't think the voters are ready for that or desire that, but we've got to do something about these harsh draconian caps that just keep, knocking us back down the hill. So with that, I will turn it over to the estimable representative, Dr. Regina English.
Thank you, my friend. Good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out to spend this time with us to hear about the work in the legislature. I actually ran 13 bills this session, and 7 of mine also were bipartisan bills. And I'm not gonna nowhere near be as long-winded as my two colleagues over here, unless you all do have questions about particular policies, but I'll share about a few. But you all do know that you can go to the Colorado General Assembly website, click on Find My Legislator, and you can see all the work that we have done. And I am currently waiting on a bill signing with the governor for House Bill 1149, where Senator Exum was my prime in the Senate, and it's comprehensive Black history and culture education in K through 12 being taught. And it's very important in this time when we see that oh, okay, I guess it's gonna be Tuesday then. I didn't get the email, I didn't get the memo, but it's gonna be Tuesday. So more information will come out about that. But the Trumpster up there on Washington Hill is, attacking DEI. So this is very important for our young people, not just Black students, but for all students to be taught our history in a comprehensive way so that they can cultivate relationships and interact better than some of us adults interact with each other. It's important for us to start. Thank you. It's important for us to start while they're young. And I'm not sure if you all know, but House Bill 1073, Protections Against Rape. This is the second time that me and one of my Republican colleagues have brought this bill, and it slightly changed from last year. We put it back on the table because what we wanted to do this session was actually take probation off the table for this crime. This crime should not be used as a plea bargaining tool for probation if you rape or violate a child. And in the state of Colorado, if you rape one child, you are probation eligible. And as long as you don't rape that same child twice, you're good to go. Just get a slap on the wrist. And sadly, guys, newsflash, it was killed on a party line vote by the Democrats in the Judiciary Committee, just to be clear. So just because we have the majority, it doesn't mean that we always agree. But for me, when it comes to kids, it's not about politics. It's about the dignity and the humanity and the respect that our kids deserve. So anything in my power I can do to ensure the safety of our children and to make sure that adult predators do not continue to violate them, I will continue to fight for this, and this bill will be going back on the table this next session. And if it doesn't pass, then it will be on the ballot for the voters to decide if we want people that rape our kids to just get probation, or do we want them to sit down and do the time and get the rehabilitation that they need. So, excuse me, I'm gonna calm down, I'm gonna pipe down. But when I'm talking about my babies, I don't care what color they are, what you're not gonna do is violate them. And so that was House Bill 25-1073, and we can talk about that more. And let's see, I have Department of Corrections visitation rights. That's also very important, and that was and still is a Black Caucus priority, because number one, we fill those jail cells more than anyone. And number two, when you are institutionalized and criminalized, first of all, everybody in the criminal unjust system is not criminal. And to add to the criminalization to keep people from visitations with their family in the outside world is now attacking their mental health system. So this is a cycle that is perpetuating a problem that we need to fix. But the bill did pass, so we're grateful for that. But there's so much more work that we need to do in our criminal unjust system, and that is definitely one of my platforms that I will continue to advocate for. And then I ran a bill, it's also bipartisan, complementary behavioral health service in jails. People need the services so that they can go back out to society and give back in a meaningful way. So when we think about the two, okay, here's a criminal, we also have to think about the fact that eventually some of them are going to get back out into society. And if we don't provide those services and do what we need to do while they're institutionalized to rehabilitate those people, then we're part of the problem. So I just wanted to give y'all that for free. Thank you. And let me see really quick before I turn it over to my favorite senator. This also is a bipartisan bill, but it was a Senate bill, started in the Senate, and it's Senate Bill 2543, Deflection Supports Justice Involved Youth. And I serve on the treatment of persons with behavioral health disorders in a criminal and juvenile justice system. In all 5 bills that came out of that interim committee, I was a sponsor, because that's how passionate I am about reforming the criminal justice system. And that is a part of public safety, people, when we rehabilitate criminals or people that we say are criminal. And then there's another one, behavioral health crisis response recommendations, competency in the criminal justice system. And lastly, there was another bill that was also a Black Caucus priority. It was extending organ and tissue donation fund, and that was in honor of Miss Emily Keyes and the late Representative and Senator John W. Buckner. And so that bill also passed and was already signed into law. But I'll leave it right there. But just know that I am passionate about the work that I do for people. It's not easy being a legislator. You get lied on, you get accused of all things. And I just want y'all to know, if there's anything y'all want to know about Representative Dr. Regina English, please call me, come to me. Let's have a conversation, because this is not an easy space to navigate, and you're not always, we, our colleagues, as we can see, we're not always going to get what we want in the legislature. We're going to have some wins, and we're going to have some losses. But the losses that I have taken on policy, that's good policy, I just pull it back and reset and put it back on the table. So just know you do have a fighter at the legislature for you and for us to get the things that we need, whether we agree on all policies or not. I'm there to do the work. Thank you for trusting and believing in my leadership, and I will turn it over to my favorite Senator, Tony Exley.
Thank you. Thank you very, very much, Dr. English, and good to be here with my colleagues, Senator Snyder and Representative Pascal. I represent Senate District 12, or Senate District 11, which is southeast Colorado Springs, southeast El Paso County. I'll give you the borders, because it's a pretty big district. The east border is Mark Shuffle, south border is Fontaine Boulevard, the north border is Constitution, and the west border is Nevada Avenue. So pretty big district. This is my 11th year in the legislature. I spent 8 years in the House, and I just finished my 3rd year in the Senate. And next year, I'll be running for re-election for the last time, because I'll be term limited in both. So I appreciate all your support over the many years. I'll talk about just a few things, and then we'll open up for questions. Senate Bill 2 was a regional building codes for factory-built structures. I did that with Senator Bridges and Representative Basenecker and Representative Stewart. Basically, factory-built homes are a little cheaper, or I'll say less expensive. They're not cheaper homes, they're just less expensive. And we are in an affordable housing crisis throughout the country, especially in the state of Colorado. So this is just another tool in the toolbox to try to create some more affordable housing in the state. The next bill I want to talk about, and one that we'll be signing with the governor. Our governor will be signing into law on Tuesday, along with the House Bill 1149 on Black History. This is the Tony Gramsci's Youth Services Program, Senate Bill 197. It's a program that's been in place for a long, long time. What we did this year is we changed the model of how those grants are put out, are distributed, to give smaller organizations an opportunity to qualify for those grants. And the whole idea behind this, several years ago, there was a lot of violence, youth violence in the Denver Aurora area. And that's when the Tony Gramsci's Fund came about. Most of the organizations that use the Tony Gramsci's funds are like the YMCA, the Boys and Girls Club, and they're doing a tremendous job. But there are smaller organizations that are grassroots that are doing work too, trying to prevent youth violence in our communities. So, and that bill passed unanimously in the House, 15 to 12, or 50 to 12 in the House, but it passed unanimously in the Senate, 33 to 0. So I'm real pleased with that. Especially, like I said, we do bipartisan work, but I haven't had, in my years as a legislator, I don't think I've had too many bills that passed unanimously. So I was real pleased with that, because it's helping kids make better decisions. And another youth services organization, engagement on school campuses. This was Senate Bill 284, and basically just opens up the door to allow youth organizations that are working. The schools have to develop a policy to allow youth organizations into the school building to interact with kids without interrupting their educational or their instructional time. So that's Senate Bill 284. And the last one that I'll talk about is House Bill 1043. It's owner equity protection for homeowners association foreclosure sales. Unfortunately, we have a lot of foreclosures in our community, especially in HOAs. And I'll give you the main crux of the bill. Basically, what it does, if somebody's facing foreclosure, there's a 9-month stay to give them an opportunity to sell their home, pay off their fines, and maintain the equity in their home. Because as you know, when homes are foreclosed on, you could have like a $200,000 home that's sold for $10,000. So this bill will help those folks that are facing the unfortunate circumstance of foreclosure, give them opportunity to sell their home, maintain the equity, and pay off their fines. Again, thank you very much for allowing me the opportunity to serve this community. I appreciate it, and we will open it up for. Okay, I'll pass it on to Senator Snyder.
I thank you, Senator. I just want to take a moment. First of all, Dr. English, we were waiting for that 1073 to come over to the Senate. Senator Rich and I were the prime sponsors over there. We'll talk about it. We started the Senate this year, next year, and have a better outcome.
For sure.
But we just got something this afternoon. I thought I'd just briefly give you all these, a lot of numbers. 657 bills were introduced this year, 487 passed. 322 bills were introduced in the Senate, 271 passed. 335 bills were introduced in the House, 216 passed. There were 114 joint budget committee bills, reflecting a lot of things, changes we had to make there. 38.4% were unanimous on their final vote in either chamber. 87.47 had bipartisan support in their final vote in either chamber, and 60.78 of all bills had bipartisan sponsorship. So when you hear about one party just running roughshod up there, that is not the case. Thank you.
All right, we're going to start. We have a couple of questions online, and then we're going to go back and forth. My biggest job is to run the microphone around the room. I've not gotten my steps in yet, so keep me running.
So let's move her around.
By the way, I'm Christy Harris. I am Senator Snyder's legislative aide. He is my favorite senator, just saying.
Everybody's got their pick.
This is Tom Byron. He is Rep. Pascal's senior aide. Hashim, and I'm sorry, I don't know your last name, sir. Coates. And is Dr. English's legislative aide. I saw Ryan. Did you leave?
Over there.
Ryan McCoubrey is Senator Exum's extraordinary senior aide and extraordinary photographer. And Ultra Donahue is also Senator Snyder's aide. So here's Tom, and he's going to be our online person tonight.
Thank you very much, Christy. And I would also like to point out that we have Selena Jacobs, our wonderful intern in Rep. Pascal's office, also here with us. But to start off, we've got a question online from Chandra Wilkins. Based on the big bill just passed by the federal House and awaiting Senate approval, how can we fight to make sure our children are still protected and not free of being our dependents at 8? Can we find ways to help the foster children with this? And how do we help children, disabled, and seniors with insurance for all those who will be dropped off of Medicaid and Medicare?
Oh, that's easy. Let's start with the softballs.
Thank you for the question. First, I'll just give you some numbers on what that budget bill will mean to Colorado. The bill just passed by the House Republicans by a nearest margin, 215 to 214, one vote, where every House Democrat and even 2 House Republicans voted against this bad budget bill. It's bad for America, bad for Colorado, and bad for Colorado Springs. The bill requires state to pay more into SNAP than they can afford, and will force nearly $300 billion in cuts into programs, and impose strict work requirements upon people that use SNAP and Medicaid, which will kick more than 8 million Americans out of the program and deny them the benefits they currently use. As studies have shown, if these cuts are enacted, Colorado could lose as many as 12,000 jobs, $1.3 billion in state GDP, 82 million in state, local dollars in tax, and just in 2026 alone, which much bigger losses expected over time. Rural and working class parts of the state would be hit the hardest. So we're hoping that the Senate does not pass that that budget bill. Real quickly, what we're going to attempt to do, because if this bill gets passed through the Senate and gets signed by the president, we're probably going to be back in a special session later on this year to try to figure out where we can help. As Senator Snyder stated earlier, we're already facing a $1.2 billion shortfall. And we may have to make some more cuts in our own budget in order to help people that are in crucial situations. It's I think in 2008, if you were a legislator then, you weren't very, very popular because we were in a recession. And I think that year they cut $1 billion out of education and millions of dollars in other programs. So pray for us, but we'll probably be heading back in a special session if this congressional budget bill gets passed and try to find some money, which means because the Colorado Constitution requires us to balance the budget, we can't go and print more money. We have to balance what we have. So that means we're going to have to make some more cuts in the departments that we already have in order to help people that are going to be in crucial situations. Now, pass on further comments.
Well, as Senator Exum said, that vote was so close. One vote. And you think about, races around the country, races here in Colorado. CD8, our newest congressional district, was Democrat, currently held by a Republican. We got to get that back. We got to get that back. We've got some people in this room that would be fabulous Congress people for CD5. I know it's a tougher ask down here, but we need to step outside of our comfort zone and really be strategic and take back control of the Congress. The timing would be perfect. It's mid-session. Not a presidential election, we have to do what we can to do that. And I can tell you from a legislative standpoint for us and for leadership, at first I was kind of miffed when Governor Polis seemed to be toadying up to Trump. Even when Mayor Mobilade went to Washington and said, oh, we want to be a partner, we want to be a test case. But, when you're in office, it's a hard analysis. I get emails daily from people, do something, say something, our country's going to pot, we need help. And I agree with them 100%, but, just making statements and condemning this or that, when it comes down to it, if the Trump administration can withhold $350 million in SNAP food benefits, how are we helping people that rely upon those? It's not an easy solution. I wish it was. We could all take the high road and just be very philosophical and express our outrage. But our job is to make sure the people of Colorado are provided for. And it's a daily struggle. Thank you, Chandra.
They summed it up.
Yeah. I mean, I would just comment, I mean, as you I'm sure you gleaned from what the senator said, we don't have this money sitting around to just cover the federal government. And so we really, the Joint Budget Committee worked very, very, very hard, cutting a lot of stuff to try to balance our budget. And if we have shortfalls that we have to cover, we're in dire straits. It's going to be really hard.
Yeah, I'm Michael Stewart, and this question is for Amy. Yesterday I was not driving. I've never needed these. Do I need this?
It's for online.
Oh,
I need it for online, okay. And my car doesn't have the type of EV vehicle connector And you drive around the state, I was down in Alamosa, and I couldn't charge my car. It had all these charges, and I thought, good, I'm ready. I was relatively naive with electric at the time. And luckily a guy was there getting his car charged, and I said, what am I going to do? And he offered to rent me for money his electricity, so I was able to get home. But can we make this universal in the state? The same for every vehicle.
Like the same charger, like Tesla has a different charger than Ford has.
This one's a Rivian, and I don't think I'd seen that one before.
Yeah, we're back to the sort of Betamax VHS question.
Exactly.
I don't know that we as a state can.
No, I do not have a Rivian.
That would be a national thing.
Tesla.
I don't know. We could look at it, but I'm not sure. I mean, the good news is that, you know, some of these, like, I have an EV too, I have a Ford Mustang, and we now have a converter so that we can charge at Tesla stations. So that's probably a more likely solution, is that we can get aftermarket converters.
I think you could get some of them, but it's more money and effort. Now, just a lady asked me what I have, and I have a Tesla, and they were talking about being mean to Teslas, and I don't think you ought to do that. I know one in here would do it, because when I bought that car, I wanted to save Earth. Very plainly, I wanted to help the planet out, except for Cybertruck. They are butt ugly. I'm sorry, but they are butt ugly. If you want to destroy them, go ahead. But anyway, I now have bumper stickers on the back of my car, and it says Elon friendly, eco-friendly, not Elon friendly.
I've noticed some people have taken the little logo off the back of their car. That's really sad, I think. I mean, it's not their fault.
Thank you.
We have another question. We have another question from online before we take it back to the folks in person. From an anonymous attendee, would like to hear why Regina English and Mark Snyder voted no on the Kelly Loving Act, which I believe was 8B 25-1312.
I'd be glad to answer. I'd be glad to answer that. So when that bill was introduced, there were a lot of very difficult and positions that I couldn't support. The whole bit about award, having that be a part of a custody hearing. The bill got amended quite a bit. And I gotta tell you the truth, I am proud of my record when it comes to defending LGBTQ+ rights. When I first ran in 2018, I was proud to have a transgender woman nominate me for my first House run. And if you look at my record, I think you'll find that I have been strongly supportive over the years of every bill that came along looking to protect and affirm the rights of all peoples in Colorado. As to this bill, a lot of the stuff that really I could not get behind got amended out of it, but there are still a few things. And really what it comes down to for me is, I think we're still learning about transgenderism, especially in regards to juveniles. For adults, you're 18, I think you should be able to do whatever the hell you want and live the identity and be protected and not suffer anything. But I think when you talk about the juvenile space, it's a lot more complicated. I think we're kind of way out over our skis on that when it comes to what the protections we want to provide. I thought the bill was essentially anti-family, and I think if there's anything a 14-year-old, I understand not every family is accommodating or loving. There's all kinds of families out there. But the number one influence on juveniles is their family and their parents. And to try and exclude them out of there, and I also think there was a strong First Amendment, which it kills me because now the Republicans are suing that bill on a First Amendment grounds. But I think there is a First Amendment case to be made there. Dead naming, misgendering people, we still have the right of free speech in this country. And I think the protections are already in place. So ultimately, I did not vote for that bill, mainly because of the juvenile space. And I hate to say this, but I knew it wasn't close. It was clearly going to pass in the Senate. If that had been a really close vote, I would have had to really strongly reconsider my vote on that one. But that's why I voted against it, and I stand by it. Thank you.
Thank you for the question, Mr. or Mrs. Anonymous Person. But I just want to say, as a mother of 5 kids, a grandmother of 11, a godmother of 5 kids, I too struggle with the government dictating relationships between parents and children. And for me, just for the record, I'm not anti-LGBTQIA. I'm not homophobe. I'm not any of those things. Because for me, it's not about the person, it's about the policy. We're not always going to agree. We were raised differently. And what I will not do is allow anybody to hijack my views and values to infiltrate theirs. Now, when it comes to policy and our kids being safe, I had my 11-year-old grandson who was living with me, who was at the Capitol with me, listening to these conversations. And so now I'm having to have different conversations with him, how people were raised differently, and it's okay, completely okay, to show up how you show up. But when you're running policy to allow juveniles, young people, to make health decisions over their body, for me, that's a no. And so, just like Senator Snyder, I stand on my vote, on my no vote. However, I too feel the same way. I respect my colleagues. I respect the work that they put in on their policies. And if that vote was a close vote to where my bill, my vote would have killed that policy, then I would have rethought that policy. And the policy passed tremendously, like Senator Snyder said. So I don't understand why people get so hung up on, well, Senator Snyder voted no, Representative English voted no. I was raised differently, and I honor that. And I honor and respect everyone else that was raised in a different type of household. But I do believe that all of us, no matter how we choose to show up, should be treated with dignity and respect. I'm a black woman. I deal with discrimination every single day in the Capitol. I need people to be outraged about that. Because discrimination is discrimination, no matter if it's LGBTQ, if it's Hispanic, if it's black people, if it's Asian people. Discrimination is discrimination. So like I said, I need people to be outraged about that. Not a vote I took about a policy that for me was not a good policy. Because I'm asking my 11-year-old grandson, son, how do you feel about these conversations? If you wanted to go through the change and I took you to the doctor, do you think you can articulate this message to the doctor that you no longer want to be a young man, you now want to be a young lady? He was so perplexed. He could not fathom what was happening in the conversation at the Capitol that he was listening to. And so for me, I have to take a pause when it comes to that. And like I said, I'm not anti-anything. I'm not. I believe, like I said again, and I'll say it again and again and again, all people should be treated with dignity and respect, and we need to run policies that reflect that. And when the government oversteps and dictates a relationship between a mother and a child or a father and a child, I have to pause. That's not okay. Thank you for the question.
If I could just follow up real quick. In this age of Trump, it is hard. We've seen the assault Trump's making on transgender folks, service members, trying to cut off medical access. It makes it particularly tough. I mean, I'm proud that I voted for House Bill 1309, guaranteeing access to medical treatment for folks that are going through some type of transgender transformation. But I agree with Representative English. You know, this to me came down to, when we're talking about kids, we gotta get it right, and I don't think we've come to that conclusion yet. You look at some of the leaders in this, England, Sweden, they've already pulled back a little, saying, we really don't know what we're doing in this space. And when we don't know what we're doing, that is not the time for us to be legislating, in my opinion.
And I just want to say, sorry guys, real quick, but I just like to give people context. Like when we're in committee, or even when we're on the floor, but more so in committee, and you ask those thoughtful questions to the people that are in the health space, and not just 1312, but it was different bills. And for me, it's about clarity. I need to be clear on what it is I'm really voting for. Because when we're dealing with the lives of people, what we were elected to do, I like to make sure I am informed in what I'm voting for. And for some of the policies that were coming through for this particular community, and the doctors were saying this is not best practice, I have to pause for that too. And in the midst of this conversation, just to give you an example, there's probably a small percentage of people that want to do this type of thing and then all of a sudden change their mind. But my daughter herself had a friend. He went from a male to a female. When he went to a female, people didn't find him attractive as a female, so he wanted to go back to being what he was born as, and it didn't happen the way he wanted to happen, and he had a mental breakdown, and now this person is institutionalized. So we need to be careful, and we need to be mindful on what we're legislating when it comes to the lives of people.
Just before we move on to our, Pascal, do you want to?
I didn't get asked a question, but I would like to comment on this bill. This was a very interesting bill. One of the things that I learned as that would be better. Yeah, sorry. Trying to turn it off so you don't hear me glugging my water. One thing I think that happens when you start to hear a lot about a bill out in the world, and especially if it touches on hot topics, is that there is a lot of disinformation out there about what is in the bill. And I did get a lot of emails about the bill that clearly reflected to me that they believed there was something in it that wasn't in this bill. There's nothing in this bill about children getting any kind of medical treatments, not in the bill. What was in the bill that I think was the most controversial for folks was in divorce proceedings, there is a section in statute called coercive control, where one of the parents can be deemed by a judge sanctioned for what is interpreted as emotional abuse to their child. And which I think is an important thing for us to have in our law. We do have parents that are emotionally abusive to their children. And what this expanded some items that could be added into coercive control. And so the situation it was addressing was there's a parent that you would have a situation where one of the parents, the child wants to be trans, one of the parents is okay with it, one of the parents is not okay with it, and so it listed if the child's like going by a different name now, they're maybe using different pronouns, it listed dead naming and use of improper pronouns like purposefully in order to bully the child as a potential reason a judge could determine that emotional abuse or coercive control is in the situation. I think that was the most far-reaching part of the bill. That was amended out. So that's not in the bill. There's not a lot left in the bill, honestly. But what is left in the bill is the ability to change your gender and your name on a bunch of different official documents, your driver's license, your marriage certificate, other official documents. And I think that was changed from I think we had that before and it was you could change it once. And now it's you could change it up to 3 times, I guess, because that was if you transitioned and then you just changed your mind and you want to transition back, then that was allowed. And the other piece that's left in there is having to do with schools. There's a change that if you have a policy about given name or chosen name, meaning you're using a name that's different than what's on your birth certificate, whatever policy the school has about chosen names, it has to be enacted for any reason that you might choose to use a different name. Not just trans, but it's a general policy that you've written for any situation where someone chooses a different name and you enact it across the board. And the other thing impacting schools was that it was about dress codes, and it says that whatever your dress code is, you've listed, here's all the things you can wear, here's all the things you can't wear. All the can wears have to be, everybody has to be allowed to choose from those. So essentially, it's getting rid of girls have to wear this, boys have to wear this kind of thing. And I think that's pretty much all that's left of it. But we still have a lawsuit. So we've got, I think, an extreme reaction to this bill. The stuff we had to hear in the legislature from people against this bill was really, really hurtful. And I think we have to learn as a society to accept people who are different than us and not tell them they can't be that. No one's making you do it. No one's making anybody be trans. No one's saying, you know, if someone became trans, you know, they're not hurting anybody. If you're hurting people, that's a different crime, and you would be charged for that crime. That it's not a crime to dress as a woman or dress as a man and use a different name. You're not hurting anybody. So to me, the reaction to this was ridiculous. I don't think that there's any freedom of speech issues here. If you say I'm being violated in my freedom of speech because I don't want to call somebody the name that they want to be called and use the pronouns they want to be called, you're asking me to treat somebody with respect and address them as a human being. I don't consider that a freedom of speech violation. I don't consider it a religious violation, which is another thing that came up. You know, I'm raised Catholic. I went to Catholic school. And the Christianity that I was raised in says you treat people with respect. It says you don't bully people who are different than you. And that's not the Christianity I was raised in. So if someone says they have a religious reason why they need to call somebody by a name they know that person doesn't like, or by pronouns they know that the person doesn't like, I don't know of a religion on earth that asks you to do that. So I don't accept that as an argument. You know, parents don't have to make their kids do anything, you know. Well, yeah, go ahead.
I think we just need to move on to the next question. I think the gentleman here in the...
If you could, okay.
And then
If you could say your name before you ask your question, like Pearson.
Senators, representatives, thank you for being here tonight. Mike Pearson, I'm the HD 22 chair. I was very disappointed that the governor vetoed SB 5, the union bill that was up. It's a huge issue for unions here and for working people in Colorado. Will that bill be reintroduced next year for the new governor to sign? Well, for the next session. Will it be reintroduced for?
I'm not sure about the bill, but there's going to be 2 competing ballot measures on in November. One would make Colorado fully a right-to-work state, meaning there would be no opportunity to assess dues onto non-union members. The other would be basically the bill that got vetoed, getting rid of the second election. So I think we'll have to wait the results of November before we can really see what might come the next legislative session. I will say that that process, Governor Polis is, for better or worse, has a pretty long history of not really supporting our organized labor friends. Last year, Mr. Thompson, last year we had that bloody day where he vetoed 3 labor priority bills in one time. I've got the railroad safety, which is a labor priority bill. I'm hoping they'll see the light and pass, at least not veto that one. But there was a lot of negotiating, going back and forth. I can't really fault the business community. I thought they tried to come to a compromise. I think organized labor did also. I don't know how close we got, whether that would make that first vote, say, 60%, 58%, something like that. I was really hoping that we would come to some compromise. In the end, it went right down to the last days of session, and there wasn't one to be had. He told us he was going to veto it, and he did. So, it's unfortunate.
We have another question from online, this one specifically for Representative Pascal, from Ms. Liz Rosenbaum. She says that carbon capture storage should not, all caps, happen in areas already impacted by past environmentally dumping, quote, solutions, unquote. As you know, the southern part of our county is used as a dumping sacrifice zone for PFAS, a Superfund site of 50 million buried tires, dry cleaning chemicals, schlaga, lock degreaser contamination, and coal ash storage. What parts of your bill protect communities already overburdened by disasters from being affected again? She also included a very sweet shout out to legislative aides.
So the bill that include carbon capture was not about environmental impact. Carbon capture is, I did get a lot of pushback from environmental organizations, which frankly surprised me, because this bill did not introduce carbon capture as something that could be illegally allowed in Colorado. It's already allowed. It introduced stewardship for closed sites. That's all the bill did.
My name's Aurora Ash, and I'm in District 18. And mine really is kind of the same kind of thing. If we're pushing it into the ground, what is it doing to our groundwater?
I am not a fan of carbon capture, so I am not going to defend it as a process. As I said, we already have it. I would prefer us not to produce it. That is where my focus is. But I agreed to do this bill because I do think it's important that if we have it and that we are capturing it and putting it in the ground, that somebody is monitoring that site rather than just having a company close it up and run away, which was what we had before. So that's my position on it.
This question is for anyone who wants to take it. DUIs and DWIs that result in death can get probation. There's been recent coverage by, I believe, Denver Post about a teenager who got probation for killing somebody. Does anybody up here intend to make harsher penalties to where basically there will be at least some minimum sentence for drinking and driving, given that it's a 100% avoidable crime?
You're absolutely right, it's a mess right now. It comes down to your district attorney and how they want to proceed with that. So I had a bill this year that passed increasing penalties for careless driving resulting in serious bodily injury or death. We had to water it down and make some changes to get it through because some of the same folks that killed Representative English's bill over in the House might have done the same here. In that case, I've gotten several emails from people about how this, and it just happens to be an undocumented person, a young person below 18. it befuddles the mind. I really don't understand how they come to those conclusions. At the same time, mandating mandatory prison sentences for things often create inequities also. So it's something I think we have to keep working on, but I am as outraged as you are that somebody who killed somebody in a driving, was alcohol involved?
Yeah.
Yeah, got probation. That should never happen.
Then can we allow a mental health pass if a family member kills a person who killed their loved one? If we're gonna be fair?
You know, like
I mean, it's
a
fair.
revenge killing, like?
Yeah, basically revenge killing. If somebody kills your family member, like say your spouse because they were drinking and driving and you go kill them, should we not do a mandatory minimum for, say, murder one?
Mandatory, that's the issue.
I think that person needs to be held accountable. They need to have serious penalties levied on their life. If that includes incarceration, so be it. If in this case it includes deportation, then so be it. Well, you're absolutely right, we need to toughen up those penalties. The problem is when we pass the big sweeping decriminalization bills 5 years ago, it was very sweeping and covered everything. Since then, we have added back in multiple thefts of automobiles, and you can lose your rights now from a new bill to own a gun. We've also peeled back and made harsher penalties for opioid distribution. Opioid distribution that results in death. I'm working on this bill here that would increase penalties for careless driving. You know, there are accidents that happen, but if you're the family member of an 11-year-old who was killed in a school crosswalk, you don't want to hear, oh, well, she was distracted because she was texting, or whatever the case may be.
I know.
So it's really hard, but I don't empathize with that point of view.
No, that's not what I'm mentioning. I'm saying if the victim's family member were to go kill the perpetrator, would they get a pass? Because if we're not going to do mandatory minimums for someone who takes one life?
I don't think that's the
No.
way our criminal justice system.
No.
And let me, can I just say this? It is hard to pass a policy when we begin to talk about mandatory minimums. It really is, because like this bill I was talking about that was killed when we were trying to take probation off the table, the year prior to that, we were trying to give a mandatory minimum of 3 years, and the bill was still killed. So when a bill goes to the Judiciary Committee, it's tough. That's a tough committee to get a bill through. So we can have all these great ideas, and then your representative or senator, whoever it is, can put that bill on the table, but it doesn't necessarily mean it's going to make it out of committee. And when things don't make it out of committee, and you all don't understand the process and how things really play out, you know, people get upset and want to vote you out and say all kinds of things and not even understanding the process. So we know there are a lot of things that need to be fixed in this state. However, we can't fix everything, but we trust and believe in our colleagues, some of them, and our constituents to really have these conversations so that we can put things on the table. But just know sometimes a bill can take 1, 2, 3, 4 years to even go through. So I just wanted to put that out since we were on a mandatory minimum conversation. Thank you.
I'm Steve Waldman. I'm the second vice chair for the 5th Congressional District for El Paso County Democratic Party. Representative English and Representative Pascal has said that there's a lot of misinformation going on. I agree that as a Democratic Party, we are horrible on communication. So is there some central clearinghouse where we can see the 50 most important bills that were passed and why those bills were good for the citizens of the state of Colorado, well, where people can go and see that easily so that we communicate to the citizens saying why the Democratic Party is good for us?
I don't know if these are in a public place, but I can put them in a public place. Oh, they are? Okay.
Or you can, like I said, you can just go to the to the website, the Colorado General Assembly website. All the bills, every single bill is on there. And if it's your representative, you can put your representative in and find their particular bills, unless I'm misunderstanding what you're saying.
You do. That's not easily accessible
That's
to the
a lot to
common
research.
citizen of
Okay,
the
gotcha.
state of Colorado.
Yeah.
They're not
Okay.
going to go look for one specific bill. They're going to say, why is the Democratic Party good? What did they do during this last session to help me as a citizen of Colorado? Here are 10 or 50 bills that they passed that help Colorado citizens.
Okay, cool, that's a party problem. Who's taking notes?
Well, that is why the Democratic caucus put together those sheets that are in the back. So we can give out with the public
But
location.
you're right, it needs to be more of a universal message.
Yeah,
Not just the baseball insiders, people that hang around the Capitol. Shatner, even the Democratic Party of Colorado should be taking the lead and working in coordination with us, which, you know, we are Democrats. It means we're like not an organized party.
It's hurting cats, yeah.
Which Joe? I'm gonna go with this Joe.
All right, my name is Joseph Shelton. First, I'd like to thank you guys for meeting with us, unlike our current U.S. representative who's hiding. So really, thank you for taking the time. This question is specified for Senators Exum and Snyder and Representative English. Most of it already got answered earlier, but I'm going further on it. So as Democrats, we claim to stand for inclusion and equity of all people and all communities, which is why it was deeply disappointing to see each of you either vote against or be absent for key LGBTQ+ legislation this session. Senator Snyder, you were one of only 2 Democrats in the Senate to vote against HB 251312, the Kelly Loving Act, which aimed to ensure dignity and root protection for trans individuals. Senator Exum, you were marked excused for that vote on the same bill, yet reliable sources who were at the Capitol during all votes in the chamber and committee confirmed you were in the building and chose not to participate in the vote and left chambers despite expressing opposition during the drafting process before the bill was even introduced. Representative English, after voting against SCR 24003, you, Senator Exum, and some of your campaign staff members met with myself and other LGBTQ+ leaders from across El Paso County and across the state of Colorado, where you committed to supporting LGBTQ+ issues and work with our community on issues that relate to us. Yet you were the only one of 2 Democrats in the House to vote against HB 251312, and one of just 4 Democrats in the House to oppose HB 251109, which would have ensured accurate gender identity representation on death certificates. Given each of your records on these critical bills, my question is, Senator Exum, since Senator Snyder and Representative English already answered this question, why did you avoid the vote entirely when it directly impacts the rights and dignity of trans individuals in Colorado, and already had your and what specific actions will you take to rebuild the trust and show that LGBTQ+, specifically trans individual lives and voices matter to you beyond just election season?
First of all, I'll stand by my record on the LGBTQ community for my 11 years. This is the one bill that I chose not to vote on because I didn't think the bill was good for the community at large. And I related it to slavery days when the whole goal was to break up families. And that's what this bill was doing. It was breaking up families. I don't question somebody's decision on how they're going to live their life. I have many family members that are LGBTQ, including my own granddaughter, and those are their decisions. But I chose not to vote on this bill because it was breaking up families. And I do not have a history of not voting on LGBTQ bills. You can look at my record for 11 years.
Thank you for the question. I can remember the first time I went to your house and talked to your mother back in 2018. And as I mentioned before, I'm very proud of my record voting in the LGBTQ+ space, in the transgender space. You didn't mention 1309, I voted for that bill. I gave you some reasons why I didn't vote for 1312. I stand by those reasons. I think that we are way over our skis in thinking we can legislate in the juvenile transgender space. There's a lot more work that needs to be done to understand that. I've marched in every Pride parade alongside you. I'm very, like I said, proud of my record. If you're going to hold one vote on one bill against me, then I think that speaks more about you than it does about me.
I concur with Senator Snyder because we all do great work. We do hard work. We do exhausting work. And for one community of people to threaten to vote us out, I mean, when I tell you, I get death threats, I get hate emails, I get all types of things from the LGBTQIA community. And I'm not against them. But the thing is, these bills pass. We have both said, if there's a bill that may be close to not passing, and it's up to one of us, then we would rethink that. So I would ask or challenge the LGBTQIA plus community to honor and respect who we are as well and respect our views and values. And I will just go back to what I said. Discrimination is discrimination. But I'm going to get to 1309 because I did have conversations with people in this particular community that said they don't even understand what the heck this bill is about and why it's necessary. So I do talk to people in this community. I do stakehold with people in this community. But when people in this community don't care to talk to me or have already formed an opinion about me because we don't all think a lot, then that's true. That does speak a lot about that particular person. And we got to stop this kind of stuff. The bill passed. So to disregard and dismiss the work that Senator Snyder has done, the work that I have done, the work that Senator Exum has done over a policy like this, that's crazy to me because you all just really don't understand what we go through on a day-to-day basis, especially me as a black woman. Like I said over and over, please be outraged about that. My tone is always policed. My body language is always policed. But all we hear about is the LGBTQIA is the victims. These people, this community, not seeing anybody in here, well, anyway, you cannot both be the victim and victimizing people. You cannot do both. You have to pick a side. And I've been victimized by this community because of my votes. And I feel like if this is a community that does not want to be victimized or treated with disrespect, this community needs to treat heterosexual people the same way, with dignity and respect, whether we agree or not agree. I already said, I'm not against this community. My aide back there, he's a gay man. If I was against this community, he would not be on my staff. We need to stop this nonsense. We got housing to worry about, affordability. People need to eat, put food on their table. That's where the focus needs to be. Discrimination is discrimination. Whoever it's against. We need to stop trying to put people in silos and say, oh, you're horrible people. You're horrible legislators. We're going to vote you out. Nah, we need to do better, Democratic Party.
Yeah, you're right on it.
I promise, Joe, to be next.
Thank you, and thank you all for being here this evening. Joe Regan, I'm an Army veteran, I do many other things as well, but I personally want to thank all four of you, first of all, for your support of SB 295. That was the bill that took KK funds and put it towards mental health care. If you are not aware, in this community, that funding has supported over 1,400 military families in having to get access to mental health care, and it's saved their lives. So thank you for supporting that. The question goes towards Tabor. Because when we have those conversations around funding and we look at these unique things, one of the things that was brought up to my attention today is when talking about the use of the KK funds, this is the tax on firearms and ammunition, and making that connection and saying, hey, this is actually going to support people in our community. On that note, how do we continue to have that conversation with folks to show that these funds are actually going back in to support our community? And when you bring up the conversation around Tabor, I know Senator Bridges was down here talking about some of the fiscal challenges and realities that we're facing as a state. What are those sorts of Tabor reforms that need to be made that, where when we talk about Tabor reforms, a lot of people get turned off pretty quickly. So how do we have that conversations around the specifics areas in Tabor that we need to be looking at to reform so that we can have fiscal stability in our state? Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Reagan, for the question, and thank you for your service too. It's a difficult issue because, and I've said this before in public, so nobody's going to be surprised by it. Doug Bruce created a policy that a lot of folks don't understand. And the whole goal, he did this in California, the whole goal behind Tabor is to reduce government. But what people don't understand, when you reduce government, you reduce services that the government helps to supply. I think it needs to be reformed. This is, and I've said this publicly before, so people can't say, well, you're contradicting yourself. I think that the part of Tabor that does not allow legislators to vote on taxes should stay in place, but the cap needs to either be adjusted or removed, because it is tying our hands to support the very people that elected us. And there's, and it's gone to the people many, many times. And for whatever reason, we get yelled at because we're legislators, and that's fine. You know, I get yelled at a lot. But I take this job very, very seriously. When I vote on things, I know it's going to have an impact on people's lives. And so Tabor has done its job. It's shrinking government. But what it's also done is shrinking our ability to help the people that elected us.
Thank you, Senator. I agree. I will never want to remove the provision that voters get to vote on whether or not there's going to be a tax increase. In local government, I ran several ballot measures. They all started the same way. Shall taxes be increased? Lay it right out there for people. But at the same time, there are draconian provisions in Tabor. And realize it took him 3 elections to get that thing passed. And it was never an overwhelming support for it. You look back under Governor Owens when we had the referendum C, a 5-year timeout. We allowed the cap to rise the way it would normally. That was a boon to our economy and to recovering from the early 2000s and 9/11 and those kinds of things. So I think there's things we can do. The fact that we are limited to 1% growth plus a small population inflationary factor, that's what's killing us right now, because inflation's a heck of a lot higher than 1%. So every costs are going up, and we can only raise revenues by that small amount. I'm still trying to figure out whether or not the ratchet down effect was eliminated in referendum C or not. I thought it hadn't been, but I'm starting to come to a different conclusion. But I think that's what we need to do. There was a measure to put a ballot measure on to repeal Tabor. I believe it was Representative Camacho. That is just not a winning formula. We need to make the case. And we are in ground zero, right? Where we are right now, the city of Colorado Springs, El Paso County, and the state of Colorado are by far the 3 largest entities in the state that have not debruced at all. And yet we're doing pretty well there. There have been times when Tabor has saved our bacon. I don't want to be the next Illinois, and have $30 billion in unfunded liabilities with pension funds and other things. So I think there's reforms that have to happen, and we're at that point now. You'll see it in next year's budget. There's nothing left to trim, folks. You know, we're gonna start having to cut essential services and other things that people rely upon. So I hope that answers your question, but there's good work and plenty of room to get something done there.
I just wanted to add that I agree that the formula really needs work, the cap formula, or it could be eliminated, but just to give you an example of things that don't go into play with the formula. Since Tabor was put into place in 1992, I think, our wildfire issues have increased, and our cost for wildfire has increased 1,200% since '92. But those sorts of things where costs are increasing, for whatever reason that's not directly tied to inflation or population growth, that's not accounted for. So it really puts us in a bind. It doesn't really capture the needs for growth because, as Senator Exum stated, the entire purpose of Tabor is to shrink government. So I don't, you know, I think we need to be providing services to people. I think those services are important. We had to make some really, really tough cuts. When you're looking at, should we fully fund education? Should we allow Medicaid provider inflation increases this year? These are the sort of things that got cut. We didn't, the inflation increase was, they did give an inflation increase, but it's very small. So it wasn't fully up to inflation. And education was kept intact, but there's a lot of other things where we had to make cuts. CDOT got hit pretty hard. And everybody cares about their roads, but you know, when we're cutting things like we're not, you know, fixing your roads or, you know, working on bridges that need to be repaired, that are old infrastructure. If those are the trade-offs we're making, I would say this is not the right decisions to be making. Something needs to change.
I'm going to make a procedural suggestion that we take one more question. And
I was just about to say we have one more question.
Yeah, our trusted aides will help us. If you have additional questions online or you need to get a hold of us, please do that and we'll get those questions.
I'm also going to ask after the last question, if you could each take a couple of minutes and talk about what's coming up, what's next for 2026.
Okay.
Okay, and then we'll mingle, so you can corner them. Not really, sorry.
Yes, hello, everyone. My name is Cindy Culp. I live on the west side in the Gold Hill Mesa area. I wondered if you could just address the fiscal crisis and say, how did we get here? The last I knew, Governor Polis was talking about a $750 Tabor refund. I think we got that a couple of years ago. And now we're to the point where we're making cuts to CDOT, and Tony says we're going to have to come back in a special session. How did we get there, and what's the future look like? Is this going to be expected from now on out?
Well, let me just ask a general question. How many years in a row did you get a Tabor refund check? Anybody? We all got one. One. The great Colorado cashback after the pandemic. What people have been used to getting is refunds because they overpaid their taxes. So the way we refund Tabor is through a complicated 6-tier system with 9 subcategories. So we take a little bit off of property tax, a little bit off of excise tax, a little bit off of sales tax, and that's how it approximates. And that is designed so if you're a high earner and you pay more taxes, odds are you probably spend more money than a low-income person, and you'll realize that benefit. What the change was for the great give back was, one, we had people really reeling from the pandemic and closed businesses, so we did that 1 year. But so many people have just got this belief that they've been getting these Tabor refund checks forever, and it's just not the case. what's happening now, I think there's a lot of factors here. I, for one, think we have, you know, when the pandemic hit, we got approximately $7 billion in federal funds, and the governor's office was very astute, and they found very creative ways to use that money, to free up other money, to run some of these signature things that Governor Polis really supported, like universal pre-K, all-day kindergarten, very worthwhile things. But, you know, these things, it's kind of a, you know, you got a bunch of plates in the air spinning on poles. I guess I'm dating myself now, but I guess it was a vaudeville thing. And that's what we've been doing. And those plates aren't going to spin forever. And so when we take money and prepay para obligations so that we don't have that in a particular year, that frees up $225 million to spend on other priorities. But then that's a baked-in year-over-year need. So what looks good in the short term ends up being a long-term liability for the state. And I think that's a big part of the reason why we're where we are now. I also think the Tabor restrictions on allowing the budget to grow naturally are a big part of that problem too. I'm sure I answered your question.
I also wanted to mention that just because you get a Tabor refund didn't mean that we had this excess amount of funds that we didn't know what to do with. So there could be, you could be getting a Tabor refund and there could be things going, vital things going unfunded because of the cap. So you've got to bear that in mind as well. But I do think a lot of this, we've got a lot of federal funds in the last several years for various things, COVID, Inflation Reduction Act, a lot of infrastructure stuff, and that's gone. So that does make an impact.
May I ask just one question, Senator Exum? Just one. My name is Gloria Martinez. I am the representative of the Latinos in the Democrat Party. I've heard everything you said, Joe, and I've heard what everybody else said. But the number one problem we're having right now in Colorado Springs is immigration. I don't know how many of you know, I got pulled over. I'm a 7th generation Coloradan. Why did I get pulled over? I'm just saying, we look, I agree with you, the way we look is how we got treated. And I don't like it. But you know this is a state problem and it's hit Springs. So we're going out here pretty soon to go get you your votes. We're going to go out there. We have created a new party inside the Democrat Party of El Paso County. How do I tell them that the 4 of you are working your butts off, with all due respect, for us? When I hear what you're saying, which is wonderful, I like the fact you're saying you're working for infrastructure. I like the way fact you're working for education. That's what they want to know. We don't all speak Spanish. We cuss in Spanish, but we don't speak Spanish. But I'm just telling you, as the new elected one, I'm working my butt off. I'm also Native American. I just hooked up with them today. So we're working with the Asian community. We're working with all of them. I need to make sure that your aides come back to me and give me what I need. And yes, with all due respect, Joe, about the LGBTQ, when I walk in a room, they don't look at me like that. They look at us, me some poor Chicana, which I'm not. But I'm just telling you, we love what you're doing, but you're going to help us. A dear friend of ours is missing right now. He is fully legal. We've been looking for him for 3 weeks. Do you think that's hurtful? Hell yes. I cried my eyes out. That's Jose Dominguez. He worked for all of you. You know he was one of those guys. Now we can't find him. So we're getting attacked constantly. I see them running around. Yesterday I saw the same truck that pulled me over. And I told him, you got a warrant? He said no. So I said, you come near me, I'm calling rape. So he didn't come near me. So I'm just telling you, I'm an old Chicana from old school, born and raised in Colorado. And I love what you're doing. But come together with me for a message so I can tell my people in Southeast Colorado Springs and all over, because we are scared and we're sick of it. So just help me out, and that's all I got to say.
And just real quick to elevate what Ms. Gloria is sharing, the immigration bill did pass. So there are things that we have done as a state to safeguard our people. But, you know, there is Black immigrants and, you know, it's more than Hispanic immigrants. But it does seem like Hispanic immigrants are the ones that's being targeted right now. So just know the immigration bill did pass. So you can tell your people that that's what we did at the legislature, because all people should matter. And that's what I mean when I say the Democratic Party, we need to reset, we need to reposition, we need to regroup, and we need to focus on the things that are really, really important that we're gonna have to deal with in terms of this budget. Because we're gonna be in this position, we're gonna be in the same position we're in this year. Hopefully we'll be in a little better position next year. But no, we're still gonna have budget issues. That is the issue at hand, is balancing the budget of this state. All this other stuff, I'm gonna just leave that there.
Well, Gloria, I think you raise a great point. I think we Democrats have dropped the ball so bad. It seemed like every 4 years we'd come around to minority populations and voters and say, oh, we got your back, we'll look out for you, we're gonna work together in teamwork, and we're gonna build a better society, and then see you later, see you in 4 years. And so I think we have to re-earn the trust of those communities, because we forfeited it. And I gotta tell you, there's one thing I've learned, there is not one single view in the Hispanic community on anything. They are a very diverse group of people, all populations are. You know, I mean, there are people that, whether it comes to reproductive rights or illegal immigration, other things like that, they run the entire gamut. But I think we have lost that connection, and that's why we've seen in the last couple of elections more minority voters trending towards Trump. And we have got to recognize that, recognize our culpability here, and work hard to earn the trust and the votes of those communities. Because I think together we can accomplish anything, and if we're divided, we just play into their hands. You know where Donald Trump is right now, right? Big private dinner with a bunch of cryptocurrency people whose names we can't even get. You know, and when I see him allowing, 500 white South Africans to come into the country, and then he's just, you know, grabbing people off the streets. That's not the America I was raised in, and that's not the America that I'm going to tolerate in any way, shape, or form. So all we can do is what we can do for Colorado, but I think you raise great points, and it's a conversation we need to have as Democrats, and realize that we've let some communities down, and we need to earn their trust back.
Thank you, sir.
All right, briefly, starting with Senator Exum and working back toward Rep. Haskell, can you just tell us what's on deck for 2026 that you're working on right now?
Thank you very much, and thanks to everybody for being here, including the people online. One of the things, when I was in the House, I don't think I had a bill that was threatened to be vetoed, or a bill that was PI, postponed indefinitely. But when I got over to the Senate, it was a little different. And so one of the bills that got PI'd or postponed indefinitely was the Igby bill, Yes in God's Backyard. And this was a bill about affordable housing. We did a project over at the church that I attend and the CDC that I'm a part of, called Village at Solid Rock. And I worked with Commonwealth, the developer, to build some affordable apartments. And they went through the affordable housing tax credit way, and the reason that that's important for developers to do that is that when you get the tax credit, then you have to rent or sell the housing that you're building at 30 to 80% AMI, or average median income, at or below the average median income of the area where you're building at. And that's why that's important. The Yes in God's Backyard bill that was PI I'm gonna bring it up. I'll bring it back again next session because we PI'd because we didn't have the votes in my own caucus. I knew the Republicans were gonna vote against it, but I didn't have the votes in my own caucus. And I'm okay with you disagreeing with the policy. I'm not okay if you don't give me a reason why you're voting no on a bill. So we'll bring that back. That's one of the things I'll be working on over the interim. We had we made a lot of changes to the bill, and we'll be doing that. The other things that I'll be doing in the interim, I'm on a few interim committees, and before I get back to the legislative session next January, I'm going to have a hip replacement. So I'll be in rehab for part of the summer, getting a new part. So I'll be faster than what you see now.
We already can't keep up with you on time.
But again, thank you for being here, and please stay in touch, and your vote does matter in everything that you do. Thank you.
Thank you all for being here, those of you that have stayed for the long haul. We really do appreciate it, and we really do love the work that we do. Like, I love my job. I love doing things for people to have a better quality of life, and I believe we all want the same things, but we get there in a different way, and that's okay. But I did have a couple bills that died, right? Like banning seclusion in schools. And for me, it is incarceration in schools. And the kids that are most likely put into these seclusion rooms are kids of color and kids with disabilities. But for some strange reason, my Democrat caucus feels like seclusion is a tool. And in speaking to educators, I suggested if they believe that seclusion is a tool, they should probably go into another field. Because what you're doing is traumatizing our babies. And what it's doing is fueling the school to prison pipeline, because this is the type of student you're creating when you're locking them away in seclusion. It blocks their egress. They cannot get out. There's no way out. If there's no way out, then you're incarcerated. And so this will be the third year in a row that I bring banning the use of seclusion rooms back to the legislature. And this is what I'm saying. We have to sometimes try 2 and 3 and 4 times to get something passed. Just because we're all Democrats, we don't always agree. And guess what? Democrats don't get it right all the time either. And there's some vile people on both sides. And we just need to be clear on that. And so we need to do better, and we need to come together and really focus on the things that are important. And like I said, I'm going to bring Senator Snyder, we're going to bring the protection from rape bill back to ensure our babies are protected. And what I didn't say, these kids that are being raped are kids of color. And I'm a doctor, research is my jam. And so data and stats is important to me. And why I'm really passionate about this is because it's not only kids of color, but these are well-to-do, well-off white men and white educators that are raping babies that look like me. And so I will continue to bring this bill back. I know that may be a tough pill for some of y'all to swallow, but it's facts. It is what it is. So I need you to respect the passion that I bring to the space, because I have to fight for my people too. We have to do things for all the communities, because that's inclusivity. And if my voice is not at the table, then decisions are being made for people that look like me without me. And that's just not democracy, and that's not the way we should do things. So that bill will be back on the table. I will continue to do the work in the criminal unjust system to make sure we can get the reforms that we need, and I will be doing some work in the family court space. But please don't confuse my passion with anger or any of those things that are said once a black woman gives a message. And that's what I meant when I said my tone is always policed. We are often misunderstood. But if you allow yourself to get to know me or someone that looks like me and have a conversation on why it is we do and say the things that we do, you will understand that you can cultivate relationships, and then we can work together. Because we're better together. We can get more done together than apart. So the infighting in both parties, there's infighting in both parties, and it needs to stop so that we can do some effective and meaningful work for El Paso County and for the state of Colorado. So again, I thank you for your support. I thank you for you all leaning into my leadership. I just want to say on June the 2nd, if you want to have a more up close and personal, intimate conversation with me, I will be having a community conversation on June the 2nd at 2054 Jet Wing Drive. It's right next door to Stumping Grounds. But I'm telling you right now, don't come in with no gotcha questions, because that's going to get shut completely down. If you're not coming in with solutions, don't even come, because we know what the problems are. So we need to come to the table with solutions. That's the kind of conversations I like to have, purpose-driven in action. So again, thank you all for hanging out with us tonight. We appreciate you all.
Well, thank you. Real quick, I had some bills that passed this year, but had to be really scaled down. I'm already working on those bills. So we talked about the increased penalties for careless driving. I'm meeting with a lot of the families and stakeholders over the summer with that to see what we can do to beef that up a little bit. Another bill we haven't talked about is spousal maintenance guidelines. A year ago, I did not know that in Colorado, whether or not you have been convicted of domestic violence against your spouse who you're now going through divorce, if your spouse is the breadwinner, they can still be required to pay spousal support to the abuser. So we changed that. We now give trial courts the ability to factor in domestic violence, other types of coercion, control, and other egregious things. Factor that into those spousal awards. New York and California don't allow convicts of domestic violence to get any spousal support. So we'll keep working on that. Same with the careless driving penalties. One bill that really I've been working on a couple of years now, and many of these bills take years, you know. But one is I work with the petroleum industry. Oh, God help me, I know that's terrible, right? But they do a lot of good work. They provide tens of millions of dollars and pay for things like our hazmat teams and others. And they have a bill, which I've had to cut this part out of it. I ran one this year for them also. We have all these trucks on the road, these big diesel trucks, right? 2014 and earlier, only are 25% of the trucks. They're over 75% of the emissions on Colorado roads. So I wanted to create a grant program where they could get a $10,000 grant towards buying a new efficient diesel, and also diesels that run on renewable natural gas, which is on our clean fuels list. But now for 3 years, the Enviros and some of the really strongly, let's go electric, they want electric trucks. Nobody's buying electric trucks. They don't do the job right now. Maybe they will someday. But that's just a real frustrating thing for me, when we could be making real strides to improve our air quality. And because it happens to have the horrible D word in there, they're not going to allow that to happen. Biggest bill I had that I was disappointed with was 1302, Homeowners Insurance Enterprise. I came onto that late. I'm already working with the director of the FAIR Plan and some others there's ways that we can lower certainly the rate of increase on property and casualty insurance, if not outright lowering it, and the numbers are really encouraging. But that's going to take a lot of stakeholding work. Last thing I'll mention is I'm very honored to have been appointed as a legislative board member for CHAFA, which is the Colorado Housing and Finance Authority. In fact, we had a board meeting today. And I also ran a bill a couple of years ago, the Middle Income Access Program. And those have come together with Proposition 123 that the voters passed a couple of years ago. We have a real opportunity to really address our housing crisis here in Colorado, especially with startup homes. So manufactured housing, tiny homes, ADUs, I don't want to take any of it off the table. I know they all have their problems and people that have concerns about it. But I think we really have an opportunity to increase the housing stock in Colorado and take the pressure off of a lot of these. Right, and that's really, why your property taxes, Mr. Bensberg, have gone up so much, is because it's a supply and demand issue. And right now, we are way short on supply, and demand is still high, and so your values go up, and that triggers a cascading effect. So we have blunted that. You should not get a full giant assessment increase based upon your valuation increase. But I'm going to drill down on that and get an answer for you.
I'll be in touch with you on that.
Otherwise, I've had some other ideas kind of stirring around in here, and I'll be thinking about those also. But those are the main areas I want to work on. Lowering costs for people and seeing if we can't get our criminal code in the right place where people are held accountable for their actions. Thank you.
Well, I'm definitely looking forward to having about a 6-month runway where I can work on bills for more than a month. I'm pretty excited about that. Well, like Senator Exum, I'm going to be getting a body part replaced this year. Probably I've got cataracts in one of my eyes. But hopefully that won't be too big of a deal. But yes, I will also be looking at my bills that didn't make it through and trying to figure out what we can do. Although they all died in appropriations, so I don't know how much of a fix there is going to be for those sorts of issues. So I'm not sure yet if they will have a life. One of those bills I think is a really big issue area, and it was a small little bill really to ask the Healthcare Review Interim Committee to look at medical billing and to have them give a couple of recommendations. But one of the ways that we passed the budget was to get rid of all of our interim committees for this summer, for this interim. So that's not going to happen. But the entire area of medical billing, I think, is a huge area where we need a lot more consumer protections. I know I have experienced in my personal life, you get a bill and you're seeing someone, if it's like an ongoing thing, physical therapy or something, just being able to track on what you've paid for and what you haven't paid for and getting the billing in a timely manner. So this bill was mostly focused on timely manner. I had one bill that I got for the first time on a service that was over a year old. And so, that kind of thing, I think, is not good for consumers, and there's a lot of potential area there to look into that. I also had a bill on the effects of mold and on how that impacts people in their homes, and I think that's a really important area because it is something that a lot of people run into, and a lot of people are just not aware of if they have mold in their homes. There's a lot of consumer awareness that needs to be done there. There could also be some regulatory work that could be done there. And also, I am a member, I haven't mentioned this yet, I'm a member of the Joint Technology Committee. And one of the things that we do is we look at all the requests for new IT projects from the different state departments. And so we will be meeting during the summer. My background, I'm a software engineer, worked in the software industry for 20 years. I was also a project manager And I am interested in finding ways that we can help be more efficient and reduce costs with our software as well. Software is a really high expense, and we've got, you know, it was kind of soul crushing looking at the list of projects, and we had to like order them, and we knew there would be a line drawn, and there would be projects that wouldn't be addressed, and it's not just software, technology in general. And some of the stuff we knew that wasn't going to get funded are things like security cameras on campuses for schools, and projects that, you know, I would just, you know, one of my kids would call it old and crusty. I mean, the software is old and crusty, and we need a lot of updates on some of this stuff, and it's sad because a lot of it's below the cut line. So I think we need to find a way to be more effective and more efficient in sourcing our software, and that's sort of a pet project area I'm going to be working on this summer to try to figure out what proposals I can make to hopefully make improvements in that area.
All right, we would like to thank all of you for coming tonight and being engaged, because without an engaged constituency, we're not going to move forward. I have just a couple of announcements. Indivisible is working with the El Paso County Democrats to put together a Medicaid cuts panel discussion on Tuesday, June 10th from 6 to 8. There are some flyers in the back. And we're bringing in some folks to come and talk to us about what the Medicaid cuts could mean, what action we can take. So we'd love to see you all there. We're out of session, right? So we're not in our offices. The best way to contact any of our elected officials is email. First name dot last name dot chamber at college.gov. So amy.pascal.house at college.gov. So it's easy to remember, and we aides here in the room are the ones that will probably see it, but we'll make sure that they see it too. So we'd like to thank our electeds for coming tonight and speaking. And if you can help us put the chairs back in the back, we'd sure appreciate that.